Do you remember when you had just finished school and you were about to start working? You had this long list of things you believed you were going to buy or accomplish within a short period of time. But with every paycheck you earn, the list just seems to drift further and further away. Even after getting a pay rise or saving for months on end, the gap between you and your dreams doesn't seem to shrink. And now, you're at a point where what once felt like a dream is slowly turning into a fantasy. Well, there's an answer for that. It's because you're stuck in a rat race. But there's something deeper underneath it all. Something most people overlook. It's funded. Someone is paying to keep you trapped in the rat race. So now, the bigger question becomes, who is behind this? And more importantly, why? To fully understand this, let's go back, way back to when this so-called conspiracy first began. As production and the discovery of various energy sources boomed in the late 1800s, Thomas Edison created the first commercially available light bulb and brought it into production. This led to multiple innovations in the industry, as manufacturers experimented with different filament materials to see which ones were more reliable. By the early 1900s, the industry was thriving, mass-producing light bulbs for an economy quickly adapting to electricity. But there was one problem. The bulbs were too good. They lasted too long. At the time, the average bulb had a lifespan of about 2,500 hours. That meant households didn't need to replace them more often, and that wasn't good for business. So in 1925, manufacturers came up with a genius but unethical solution. Major companies from around the world gathered in Geneva, Switzerland, and agreed to form a massive cooperation, the Phoebus Cartel. Its main goal? Maximize profits for its members. The organization was intended to last for 30 years, though as we'll see, it didn't quite make it. The cartel had two main objectives: lower production costs, and to increase profits by selling more bulbs. They planned to achieve this by deliberately reducing the lifespan of bulbs from 2,500 hours to just 1,000. That way, consumers would have to buy new bulbs more frequently and at prices pre-agreed upon by the cartel. Manufacturers who produced bulbs that lasted longer than 1,000 hours were fined. The cartel succeeded. Its members made substantial profits during that period. However, the Phoebus Cartel ended operations in 1940, 15 years early, due to World War II, which disrupted coordination among its members. But even before that, the cartel was struggling due to uncompliant members. This alleged scam didn't come to light until the 1950s, when investigations exposed what had happened. But what if I told you that this scam actually has a name? It's called planned obsolescence. And it's still happening today, in almost every industry. Planned obsolescence is a business strategy where a product is deliberately designed to have a limited lifespan or to become outdated after a certain period, even if it's still functional. And it's this very tactic that has helped China boost its economy so rapidly by producing affordable, yet short-lived products that force customers to keep buying more. The result? More profits for manufacturers. One of the clearest examples of this can be seen in the smartphone market, where new models are released every year. These launches are designed to make users with older models feel left behind, nudging them to spend money on the latest version. Even if someone decides to stick with their current model for a few more years, they're often forced to upgrade when they start missing out on software updates. And Apple is one of the companies that has truly mastered this art. Not just releasing new models annually, but also dropping new colors with each launch. Even if someone hesitates to upgrade for technical reasons, they might find themselves tempted just because their favorite color is now part of the lineup. But this technique isn't new. Back in the 1920s, when Henry Ford was focused on building the most durable car someone could drive for years, General Motors took a different approach. They introduced yearly model updates and new colors, a strategy that would later shape the entire auto industry. The goal? To squeeze as much money as possible out of consumers' pockets. However, in 2016, Apple found itself in hot water when customers began noticing that their older iPhones were slowing down after a certain iOS update, specifically the iOS 10 update. Devices like the iPhone 6 and 6S felt sluggish. Apps took more time to launch, touch responses lagged, and benchmark performances dropped significantly. Some phones even shut down unexpectedly, sometimes when the battery was still at 30%. Keep in mind, these devices were functioning fine before the update, so customers quickly grew suspicious and concluded that Apple was intentionally slowing down devices to push users towards buying newer models, like the iPhone 8 and X. As complaints flooded in, Apple eventually admitted that they were slowing down devices, but not for the reasons people assumed. Apple claimed they were reducing CPU performance to prolong battery life. Their explanation was that new updates demand more from the CPU, which puts more strain on aging batteries. Since older batteries can't hold a charge for longer periods, Apple decided to limit CPU power to keep the phones from shutting down prematurely. But still, this wasn't convincing enough, especially when some phones were dying at 30% battery. And if Apple's intentions were really so noble, why didn't they tell customers up front? To make matters worse, iPhone sales were already declining. From over 220 million units sold of the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus in 2014, sales dropped to around 159 million units for the iPhone 7 series in 2016. So it was difficult for Apple to dismiss the narrative that this whole thing was about driving more sales. Multiple class action lawsuits followed, and Apple was eventually fined $500 million and ordered to be more transparent with customers in the future. Interestingly, many of the problems people were experiencing could have been solved by simply replacing the old battery. And many users ended up doing just that. So now you may ask, why not just buy a new battery instead of a whole new phone each year? Well, Apple had the same thought and they moved quickly. In their newer models, Apple made it increasingly difficult to replace parts. They introduced sophisticated software that pairs individual components with the phone's internal system, preventing third-party repairs. Only Apple-certified repairs are allowed, and they're often expensive, with some part replacements costing half the price of a new phone. So once again, customers are funneled toward buying new devices, boosting profits for Apple's executives and investors. Some of these tactics can be avoided if you're aware of them. In that case, you keep your money and spend less. And remember, I'm just using Apple as an example. But the bigger issue is that these strategies are everywhere. If all industries are collectively applying these tactics on you, they constantly keep draining your pockets. And apart from planned obsolescence, another tactic these companies have deployed to drain more money from you is through subscriptions and installment plans. Even if someone doesn't have the full amount to purchase the product, the desire to upgrade to a newer version still lingers. So they go for the installment plan, paying small amounts over several months. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. In fact, some people view it as a better option than paying the full amount up front. But when you add that to your other already existing plans, like your car, home appliances, or mortgage, then it starts to become disastrous. Some people get trapped in this cycle. A new model drops before they've even completed the payments on the previous one. So what do? They return the old one, get the latest model, sign up for a new plan, and the cycle continues. Payment plans are getting wild. For example, during the 2025 Coachella Festival, it's estimated that more than 60% of attendees opted for a payment plan just to attend. Considering that most of these concert goers are Gen Z, it's alarming. If they adopt this spending culture so early in adulthood, it may become incredibly difficult for them to save, invest, or build long-term wealth. The most obvious solution to all these problems is to avoid unnecessary spending and stop chasing trends. But these subscriptions? They've gotten so out of control that they're almost unavoidable, and depending on your line of work, it's easy to get caught off guard. Take HP, for example. They've been jamming their customers' printers, stopping them from printing, even when their cartridges are still full. Simply because those customers canceled a shady ink subscription plan they were unknowingly enrolled in while purchasing the printer. The printer literally won't print unless it's loaded with cartridges purchased directly from HP. Farmers are dealing with something similar. Some John Deere customers are being forced to wait months for their tractors to get fixed, missing out on valuable time and farming seasons because of restrictive repair policies. The motive behind all of this? To extract as much money as possible from the consumer, benefiting only a few at the top. With all these companies working against you and your wallet, some people even go overboard, piling on multiple subscriptions for services they barely use, sometimes just once a month. It's estimated that the average American spends between $200 to $300 per month on subscriptions, and many remain subscribed to platforms they don't even use anymore. To make it worse, a lot of these subscriptions are running on credit, sinking people further into debt. And by the end of the day, it becomes nearly impossible to build any substantial wealth.